All, after an overwhelming response to our session 1 of the Voice of the MSME, it is our pleasure and honor to launch the session 2, which is a very important session. Here we are going to talk about the opportunities in US and Canada for the MSME companies in India. So again, a very important session and welcome to you all. In this session, before we start, let's first talk about USA. How good is USA for business? A very important topic. If you look at USA, without doubt, it stands as number one for many aspects, whether it is about the economy, whether it is about the entrepreneurship, whether it is about the leading consumer-based country, or whether it is about the number one country for foreign direct investment. So in whatever way you look at, USA definitely tops the chart in many aspects, and which are very important for a businessman. Again, just to repeat, number one economy of the world, number one consumer base, highest consumption happens in the US. It's a number one destination for foreign direct investment because the entrepreneurship is done at a very high and a very matured level there. It is the number one country for the highest number of Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. Every city you go, you will find a big brand being operated in the US. Again, it is also the number for the top ranking university. You talk about engineering, you talk about law, you talk about any other profession. The leading universities are there in the US, well supported by research and development. And again, if you look at our own Indian exporters, let's say IT and the BPO, more than 70% of our revenue comes from the US. So that is the importance of US as an economy to the world and to India. And again, we all know that the number one currency which we all operate in for trade is US dollars. And it also ranks number one for agility, for modernization, for being dynamic working culture. And I already spoken about the number one ranking for entrepreneurship, which basically is supported by the easy access to capital. True venture capitalists do exist there. And it has seen a very strong economic and political stability. It's a democratic country with very simple and straightforward, seamless transfer of power whenever a new party comes to power. And again, this has to be again spoken about. It's a number one country where people with the Indian origin are now leading the global companies as CEO. You name it and they are there. Microsoft, Mr. Satya Nadella, Google, Mr. Sundar Pichai, so many examples, and that is all possible because of the ecosystem which USA provides. And as we speak about the USA, we have to speak about Canada, a country next door to the US, a country so much integrated into the US that it is as good as living in US when you are living in Canada. Again, it has the longest open border, right from the east coast to the west coast. It's the longest open border, no military. People who are Canadians or Americans can just walk into each other country either for tourism, either for business, either for work practically. And it has the highest export of goods and services to the US. There are treaties in place which ensures that a lot of things which are produced in the Canada go seamlessly into US for consumption. And the infrastructure wise, exactly the same. You are driving from US into the Canada, you won't even feel the difference. The road, the infrastructure is all the same. As a matter of fact, they share the same country code. So if you are dialing from India to the US and Canada, they have the same country code, which is +1. And most importantly, they have a treaty which we must know about. A treaty which basically makes US and Canada as one country from many perspectives, especially for business or for working. And that treaty is called NAFTA, North American Foreign Trade Agreement, the new name being United States, Mexico, Canada, USMCA. We should all know about this treaty. And this treaty, as I already mentioned, allows ease of doing the business between the two countries. It's a simplified or exempted duty. For many things, you don't even have to pay the duties as you produce the goods in Canada and market into the US market. And without doubt, US and Canada share the same time zone. Same time they get up in the morning, same time they have the lunch, and the same time they go to sleep. So practically, I would say they are so similar and so integrated. And the travel facilities or the transportation facilities are so good in between those countries. I, as a Canadian citizen, would take my car from one city in Canada and go and get my petrol or gas filled up in the US city. That is the ease of travel or transportation between the two countries. And while the US is number one, Canada is, for all practical reasons, number two by many standards. And again, it is also the number one country, Canada, where our Indian students love to go study and make a long-term life out there. Again, while US is ranked number one for agility, Canada is not far away. It is ranked number two. It is ranked number 5 for entrepreneurship. And the beauty of Canada, it is highly rich in resources. You talk about a resource and they have a plenty of them. As a matter of fact, mining is a huge business out there. And not many people know they have the third biggest oil reserves of the world. They have oil reserves which will last for 100 years together. So I think that's something people may not be even knowing about Canada. And it is also one of the countries which gives a warm welcome to the immigrant. You talk about language, culture. I, as a Canadian, went to Canada in '96 and I feel as good as home when I lived there. So it's a beautiful place to be there. And it also offers a lot of attraction for the corporates. Very low tax rates. It may range from 11% to 15% up to a range of your net profits. And it has advanced in your sale process. Today, they have advanced from GS to harmonized sale type, which is called in simple word HST, which ensures that there is only one tax rate applicable, and that eases the pain of the businessman or the buyers big time. And you won't know, but that's a fact. The top 11 banks of the North America include 5 banks of Canada. The banking industry in Canada is very strong. Their balance sheet, their asset base is so strong, and it is also happens to be one of very large employer of people. And ease of visa for businessman. Will speak about couple of things which will show you how easy it is for existing businessmen to open their business there and get a visa. So we'll speak about that also. And again, a big pleasant surprise. We are not far away from dealing with the Indian banks. Lot of Indian banks have opened their operation in Canada, like ICCI, SBI. For all matter of fact, if I have an account in India ICCI, my KYC may be replicated to a certain extent if I open my bank account in ICCI Canada, or they might be opening up the credit line because of your existing relationship is in India. So again, a very important information for a businessman. So if I was to summarize, USA and Canada offer excellent opportunity for business growth, and you think Canada, you are into US, you think US, you are into Canada. That is as seamless or as simple as to be there. And as I mentioned, Canadians have complete access to the US. complete access. And that has happened, one of the main reasons it has happened, because of this beautiful treaty, which is called the NAFTA, earlier name, and now called USMCA, North American Foreign Trade Agreement, or in other words now US, M for Mexico, and CA for Canada, UMCA treaty. This treaty was originally put in place in 1994. Again, it got a new name in 2020, but all the original aspects more or less retained. And what it do? It opened market. So we practically eliminated all the tariffs on import and export of goods and services between the countries in the North America. They removed these investment barriers. They removed the conditions, which you used to apply for government procurement. So all that aspect, so they practically created one big country, which came out of this whole NAFTA treaty. And look at the trends now. The moment this treaty was put in place in 1994 or around 1990s, look at what was happening as a business between the countries within the North America. And now look at the current situation. Practically the business has grown 100 times, where, whether it is the export, import, whether the investment, everything saw a big boom. And I think huge credit to the treaty and huge credit to the entrepreneurship. And again I repeat, if you are in Canada, think as if you are as good as in USA. And again, I have to mention a very important aspect, the TN visa, which is called the Treaty NAFTA visa. As a Canadian, for example, you can go to the US to do work or a professional job without requiring an H1 or an L1 visa. And again, you don't need to apply for a TN visa from any consulate. You just have an offer letter, for example, from a US company, and whether you go by the road or by airline, whatever you choose, or by even train, and the visa is stamped at the border. So that is so simple when we talk about the TN visa. Again, with the TN visa, your even spouse also gets an accompanying visa, and including your children. So a very easy process, let's say, for Canadians to work in the US. And again, for Canadians, there are other many big facilities in US. For example, your Canadian credit history get the same weightage in the US, while you get finance. Either it is for buying a house, either it is basically for opening a business. You don't need a visa for tourist or business. And similarly, you don't practically need a study visa to also be there. So again, two countries, but practically living like one country. And while being in Canada, you still get the benefit of, lovely government support from healthcare perspective. The gun laws are very strict, so you must feel safer. And again, the cities like Brampton in Ontario or Surrey in British Columbia are as much Indian. They give you all the aspects of Indian culture. So if somebody was make some logic out of this, live in Canada, enjoy this benefit, and enjoy the economic benefit of US as any US citizen would enjoy. Now, let's talk, having spoken a lot about the US, the number one economy, having spoken about Canada as a very important integration, or in simple word, into the US benefits. Let's first talk about the visas for Canada. And today, because we are Voice of MSME, we're going to talk purely from the visas which are applicable for a businessman. One of the very important visa we're going to talk about is ICT. It is called Intercompany Transfer. And it is the most preferred visa. I would imagine in my last many years of practice in this area, 99% businessmen who understood the process decided to go for ICT than for any other visa. And the reason for that is, it is legal, It is easy process, truly easy. I am underlining the word. And it is very economical. You are not talking about $30,000, $50,000 cost to do that. It is practically much economical. And it basically applies to businessmen who have existing business outside Canada, where they themselves as an employee of the company or the other employees can be transferred to Canada on a work permit to begin with and run the operations of Canadian subsidiary, and in due course also can apply for the permanent residence. And this whole process means initially you get a work permit for 1 year, which can be renewed for 5-7 years. But most probably before that 5-7 years completion, you would anyway get a PR. So you may not need to renew your work permit also. And there are many advantages of this ICT visa. It's a federal based visa. You can live and work in any part of Canada, whether it is Vancouver or it is Toronto, and there's no minimum investment required. What is required is a very practical business plan, which we will help you anyway to make sure that you are able to convey to the immigration department that you have a valid and a practical business plan to run your business in Canada. And the beauty of this visa, you don't need an English test for getting the work permit. Yes, definitely, when you will apply for the PR, you will need that. But to begin with, there is no English test required. That's a very important element. And you don't need to even go for evaluation of your education certificate. All that WES stuff can be avoided at this stage. And most importantly, there are no age barriers. You could be 50, you could be 60. It's all making sure you have a business and a business plan to support your thought. And this visa is for the whole family. You have work permit for yourself, open work permit for your spouse, and children who are up to 22 years of age, open study permit. And then legally, as per the foreign exchange laws of India, you can even transfer 4 times the net worth of Indian company as share capital for your Canadian subsidiary, and that is all legal as per and does not require most of the time any RBI approval also. And you would be surprised that you may have only a turnover of 2 or 3 crores every year and still you may be eligible for this scheme. That's a very important thought. And added to that, it does not matter if the business is a sole proprietor, partnership, private or trust. It does not matter at all to be part of this process or use this facility. And again, the subsidiary which you will establish in Canada can be 100% owned by you or can be owned 51% by you, and you may decide not to have any Canadian citizen or resident as a shareholder or as a director. So you yourself can run and own this company. So it's all your initiative, owned by you, and then the whole time, total time to get this visa is only 5 to 6 months. In some cases, we have got this visa done even in 8 weeks. So definitely this is a model or this is a visa which existing businessmen must think seriously about. And then there are other startup visas. I'll just name few of them. Angel investor groups, where as a team of 5 or 6 investors, along with the approved angel investor, a new thought can be perceived with a minimum investment of 75,000, where we are talking about creating a group for incubation of a new business idea. And then there are designated business incubating companies like Toronto Business Development Corporation, which also helps new entrepreneurs with innovative ideas to partner with them. And if the idea is good enough, then you get a sanction to work there in the country on a work permit, which can later on change to a permanent residence, or if you have a running business already and you are looking at expansion of your business in the Canada or in the North American market with Canadian as a base, then you can also talk about getting support from designated venture capitalist. So all these are options which are covered under the startup visa. And again, there are many other investment programs which are also promoted by different provinces of Canada, whether it is British Columbia, Ontario, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick. So all these provinces also have their nomination program, both from the investment or skill side. There are conditions which apply, which basically means you must remain in the province for number of years. You should not show intention of moving out of the province before that. There will be audit done, your performance will be checked as you had promised, and only then, for all practical reasons, you can be standing in the queue for getting a Canadian PR. To begin with, I have to underline, it is not a PR, it is restricted work permit or a restricted visa where you have to live or work or invest in the particular province depending upon which nomination program we are talking about. So it's very performance based. Now, generally the market talks about another very important visa which is called the Labor Market Impact Assessment. So the whole idea of this visa is that if a Canadian employer wants to hire a resource in his Canadian geography, if that resource is not available, then they can go out and hire the resource from outside country. I would seriously request people to think that go only if you have a genuine employer who is going to give you an employment which justifies your experience and future expectation. Please don't fall in the wrong hands, because this visa is strictly made for Canadian employers to hire resources which they are not able to find, or that they are not able to find that skill set within the Canadian geography. That is the whole purpose of LMIA. And again, LMIA process goes through a very formal process of advertisement in the newspapers, then people apply, then the assessment is made, and in case, as I said, if you can't find the right resource within the Indian geography, in the Canadian geography, only then they can hire somebody from outside Canada. So please follow this process in letter and spirit. Again, now let's talk about the visas for USA also. We have already spoken about one of these some important visas for the businessman for Canadian. Again, as I mentioned, working or doing business in Canada is as good as doing business within the US or for US. Couple of visas I want to talk about the US is one is called the L1. L1 and one is called the EB1C. L1 visa is practically the same as we have spoken about the ICT visa for Canada. It applies to existing businessmen who have, let's say, business outside USA in this case, and they want to expand their business in the US market. So they are looking at sending key stakeholders, which can be owner of the company also, to be moving into USA on an L1 visa. Again, when we start this process, a business plan has to be there for the initial visa, as we had spoken about the ICT, and that's the way it works. More or less the same process as ICT, but ICT process is much easier in the sense that many times for ICT you don't need an interview, while for L1 most of the time an interview is required in the US consulate. Again, L1 is also split into L1A, L1B. It all depends upon the skill set, whether it is managerial or technical skill set somebody brings on the table, and the renewal is also linked to L1A and L1B. Again, L1 as ICT, it is not constrained by a minimum wage pay, but definitely you have to take in consideration the wage pay applicable in the state and in the federal, which are there, And the same for Canada. Again, in Canada, the state is called province, just for some additional information. Again, similarly as for the ICT, L1 visa also allows your spouse and your children to accompany you. Spouse can do the job, and against children up to the age of 21 can also go for studies in an open study permit. There's another visa called EB1C visa, which is an immigrant visa. So L1 visa is a non-immigrant visa which does not move you into the queue for the green card in the US, but you can shift your L1 visa into EB1C visa, and then you can fall in the line to apply for the green card. These are just some technical words to be spoken about, but the whole idea is to speak about visas that may be very helpful for existing businessmen. And here our focus is to support MSME sector, which is the micro, small, medium companies of India, which we feel very passionate about. Again, I mentioned about L1 and EB1C visa difference. L1 is a non-immigrant, EB1C is an immigrant visa. L1 can be converted into EB1C depending upon the timelines. Again, we as a team purely focus on MSME. We are proud to call us as MSME specialist. I, Mr. Ashish Dua, Chartered Accountant, supported by Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Sudhir Sajdeva, we only do work for MSME, and that is our focus. As part of the services, we help in foreign company incorporation, whether it is in Canada or US, as a matter of fact, any part of the world. We help in the complete company structuring, the shareholding structuring, all that agreement which have to be put in place to get your corporate operating in the outside country. We help to prepare the business plan, complete business plan, whether operational, financial. We help, which is required by the immigration authorities. We also work very closely with the banking industry, where while you are in India, we can help you to open the bank account in a foreign country legally. And also we follow strict guidelines of the foreign exchange rules and regulation of each of the country, and help you to guide you to transfer the fund legally, and that's a very underlining word for us. And we work with the leading law firm. For example, for Canada, we work with Green and Spiegel for getting your visa applied and processed with the best of the professional guidance and help. And because if you are moving into a new country, you may have requests to acquire existing business or have a strategic tie-up or get approval from the local government. So all that is also facilitated by our team. And anyway, no business can grow without the fund. So we can help you to get funds from a startup fund, from some of the development banks of those countries, or even get a line of credit based on your Indian securities, and do that. And without doubt, we can also help you give you the guidance on double taxation, because as you move into a new country, your residential changes. There are times you have to file return in both the countries. So all that aspect is also well guided by us. And lastly, when you are launching a new product or your services in a new country, we come in big time to support you for branding or marketing. So that's all from our side for the session 2. Our new session or upcoming session is going to be opportunities in Dubai, which we are going to launch or release next week. Till then, we wish you all best of luck.